1 minute ago, judge sentences Suge Knight to death after defending Diddy. The R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego buzzed with quiet tension. It wasn't an ordinary Tuesday. Prison guards leaned closer to the radio room. Journalists outside the gates refreshed their feeds. Something was coming, an exclusive voice behind concrete walls. Suge Knight, founder of Death Row Records, convicted of voluntary manslaughter, had something to say. And he wasn't whispering. A podcast called Collect Call with Suge Knight had gained underground popularity. Every week, Suge spoke from behind bars. But today's episode was different, raw, unfiltered, and deeply controversial. The host's voice rang clear. Today we go deep. Suge Knight talks about Diddy Cassie and the industry's darkest secrets. Suge's voice crackled through the prison phone line. First of all, people act surprised, but this ain't new. The industry has been like this for decades. What Diddy's going through, he didn't invent it, he inherited it. Silence followed. Then he continued. You think Puffy came up with freak-offs on his own? Nah, that's learned behavior. Passed down from the OGs in the game. Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, Jimmy Iovine. They groomed him and he passed it on. The host coughed nervously. Suge, that's a bold claim. Truth ain't polite, Suge replied. Listeners froze. Reddit threads exploded within minutes. He shifted tone. People are mad at Diddy. Sure, he got caught. But let me tell you something. Cassie, she knew. She played the game. She was in it for the lights, the fame, the access. She got what she wanted now. Suddenly she's innocent. That's not how the streets see it. It was a dangerous assertion. And it landed like a thunderclap. Suge spoke calmly, as if explaining traffic laws. You step into that world, you don't get to cry foul later. You don't climb up off the backs of the system and then point fingers. Across the country, commentators slammed the remarks. But Suge wasn't done. He continued. Cassie ain't no civilian. She got introduced, protected, elevated. That doesn't happen unless you play by the rules. Now she wants out. She better tell the full story. Not just the parts that make her a victim. The podcast host paused. What are the rules, Suge? The rules: you stay silent, you smile, you sign. You don't ask questions. You do what you're told, and if you're lucky, you get rich. If not, you disappear. Then came the most chilling line. This ain't about good or bad. This about who's willing to bleed for the spotlight and who's willing to bury those who won't. By the end of the call, Suge had shifted the narrative. No longer was Diddy just a villain. No longer was Cassie only a victim. He painted the whole system in shades of gray, with blood smeared on every dollar. The backlash was immediate. Civil rights groups, women's organizations, and industry veterans condemned his comments. Hashtags like "Shachers cancel Suge Knight" and "Shut it down" trended worldwide. But the damage or the impact was done. By sundown, clips from the podcast had circulated to millions. Even inmates inside R.J. Donovan buzzed about it. The voice behind bars had just lit a fire, and no one knew what would burn next. The podcast mic crackled. The host, a calm, polished voice known for true crime reporting, welcomed listeners to the latest episode. But today's guest wasn't calling from a fancy studio or celebrity mansion. He was speaking from a 6x9 cell inside R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, a medium-security prison, surrounded by fences, razor wire, and a heavy silence that never truly left. On the line, we've got Marion Suge Knight, the host announced, founder of Death Row Records, currently serving a 28-year sentence for manslaughter. Suge, thanks for calling in. There was a pause, and then his voice, gravelly, slow, deliberate. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Listeners leaned in. This wasn't going to be a typical podcast. The host wasted no time. We're talking about Diddy today, his arrest, the allegations, sex trafficking, exploitation, the so-called freak-offs. You've seen the headlines. What's your take? Suge chuckled. Man, look. People want to act shocked like this stuff just started. Nah, this culture. It's been around since before I got in the game. Puffy didn't invent this. He just played by the rules that were already written. The host pushed, "Are you saying he's innocent?" "I ain't say that," Suge replied. "But I'm saying he ain't alone. The industry has a dark side, always has." Puffy. He just got caught in a wave that's been building for decades. All these people acting like saints, now they were silent when it suited them. The internet lit up instantly. Clips were shared. Headlines popped. Suge Knight defends Diddy in prison interview. Death Row founder Cassie knew the rules, but Suge wasn't done. "You know what really makes me mad?" he asked. "Everyone going after him like he's some lone monster. But where was that energy when these parties were happening? When the doors were shut and the cameras were off, the host tread carefully. You mentioned freak-offs. You believe they happened?" "I know they did," Suge said flatly. "Not just Puffy. Russell Simmons, Clive Davis, Andre Harrell. You think Puffy just woke up and invented all that? No. That's learned behavior. That's passed down. Like a dirty family secret." He paused, then added, "But I ain't cheering for no man to rot in a cell. I was there, still here. It doesn't help anybody, but let's be real." He stepped in it deep. And yeah, some of these women, they were brought into the game with promises. But those promises come with a price. It was that line, the price, that hit a nerve. Especially when he mentioned Cassie Ventura. Cassie, Suge said. She played the game, got the platform, got fame, but now she wants to burn the house down. "I ain't saying what happened to her was right, but you don't get to act like you ain't know the currency being exchanged." Social media erupted in outrage. First Cancel Suge Knight began trending within hours. Influencers, survivors, even former collaborators slammed the interview. To many, it was clear Suge wasn't just defending Diddy. He was defending a twisted legacy one, built on silence, coercion, and trauma. Still, the interview kept rolling. "You talked about a culture," the host said. "What exactly do you mean?" Suge laughed again, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. "Let me tell you something about the ball egg test." Silence. "What it's a test, man. An old joke in the industry. They take a raw egg, stick it somewhere it doesn't belong, and if you flinch, you ain't ready for the game. You ain't done enough. That's how they haze people. Rappers, actors, singers. It's sick, but it's real." The host was stunned. "You're saying people actually do this?" Ask Around, Suge said. "They don't play that joke with me. They knew better. But these young cats, they are desperate. They bend. And the ones at the top, they laugh." It was horrifying and deeply revealing. But the worst was yet to come. Suge shifted gears. "See, y'all keep focusing on Diddy, but what about Interscope Universal? The labels pay the hush money. They know who to silence. They got files, they got footage, they got leverage." He claimed Cassie wasn't the only one paid to keep quiet. He named Capricorn, a woman reportedly assaulted and paid off with label money disguised as a salary. That money came from Interscope, Suge said. They made her pay taxes on it like she had a regular job, but she was on a huge payroll. That's how deep it goes. The podcast ended with a final question. "Do you believe Diddy will talk, that he'll expose the others?" Suge's tone dropped. "I hope he does. But I also hope he doesn't end up like Jeffrey Epstein, hanging from the ceiling before the truth gets out." The line went dead. No goodbye, no outro, just silence. Within hours, the backlash was nuclear. Human rights groups issued statements. Prominent activists called for Suge Knight to be permanently banned from media platforms. Some even launched petitions demanding he face harsher punishment, calling him a dangerous apologist for abuse. But some disturbingly agreed with him. On fringe forums and corners of Reddit, a different conversation stirred. Was he wrong, someone posted, or just the only one brave enough to tell it? Either way, the damage was done. The interview, meant to be a one-off, had become a firestorm. And as the trial against Diddy continued with more witnesses coming forward and new evidence surfacing every day, Suge Knight had injected a new and deeply disturbing narrative into the mix. A narrative that didn't excuse the crimes, but revealed the rotten soil they grew from. The day after Suge Knight's explosive interview, the media frenzy hit a fever pitch. Major outlets ran headline after headline. Suge Knight sparks outrage with pro-Diddy comments from prison. Victim advocates demand federal review of Suge Knight's podcast access. Calls for the death penalty has Suge crossed the final line. Even from inside R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility, the ripple effects of Suge's words were felt beyond the barbed wire. Prison officials issued a statement confirming they were reviewing the circumstances under which the call was recorded. But it was too late. The audio had gone viral, the damage done. On Reddit, especially in subforums like RR True Crime, R Pop Culture Justice, and RR Political Scandals, users flooded threads with disgust. He literally victim-blamed on a national platform. Imagine telling a survivor they should have expected abuse. This isn't just a culture problem, it's cancer. But while the outrage burned hot online, something colder was happening behind the scenes. In court, prosecutors seized on the momentum. A special investigator was appointed to examine Suge Knight's claims, especially those involving payouts allegedly disguised as label salaries. Financial records from Universal Music Group and Interscope were subpoenaed. A federal inquiry quietly opened. Meanwhile, Diddy's defense was unraveling. His legal team, already stretched thin, now had to respond not only to the mounting evidence in court, but to public sentiment poisoned by Suge's words that intentionally or not tied Diddy to an entire system of ritualized abuse. Reporters hounded Diddy's attorney outside the courthouse. Do you deny your client was present at the so-called Velvet Room events? No comment. Did Universal pay off victims? No comment. Has your client seen Suge Knight's interview? A pause. Then we're focused on the facts in court, not opinions from convicted felons. But those opinions kept making waves. Suge's podcast call had also sparked interest from journalists hungry for dirt that connected the dots. Whispers of old parties resurfaced. A 2009 NDA signed by a then-unknown artist mysteriously leaked, showing she'd agreed to performance participation in exchange for promotion. Her name redacted, but insiders knew. Behind closed doors, the music industry panicked. Executives scheduled emergency calls with legal teams. Managers warned artists to scrub social media. And a few brave insiders began reaching out anonymously to journalists offering tips, documents, phone numbers. Diddy, for the first time in decades, wasn't just facing a court case. He was facing a reckoning, and at the center of it all, Cassie Ventura remained silent. She hadn't made a statement since her lawsuit the year before. She didn't appear on talk shows, didn't release cryptic tweets. Her silence, in contrast to Suge's bombastic performance, was deafening and powerful. But others were ready to speak. A woman named Deja, former makeup artist for Cassie, finally broke her NDA. In an exclusive interview with a major outlet, she recounted a night in 2015 when she found Cassie curled in a hotel bathroom, shaking dress torn. She kept saying, I didn't want to. I asked her if I should call someone. She just said, they already know, they don't care. When asked why she stayed silent for so long, Deja answered simply, I was afraid. Not just of Diddy, but of what people would say. That I was just another woman trying to take down a man. Her courage cracked open the floodgates. By the end of the week, 3 more former employees, 2 women, 1 man, had come forward. Each told similar stories, parties, coercion, threats. NDA enforcement is like a private military operation, and the drugs, always the drugs, ketamine, GHB, ecstasy, IV drips set up in hotel rooms, recovery nurses paid in cash, victims treated like actors on a stage they couldn't leave. One of the male accusers, a former choreographer, described a night in 2014 when he was offered to a VIP guest at a freak-off. When he declined, he was blacklisted from 3 major tours in less than 48 hours. "I didn't get fired," he said. "I got erased." The DOJ took notice. They issued a rare joint statement with the FBI. "We are expanding the investigation into allegations involving coercion trafficking and corporate conspiracy across the entertainment sector." Suddenly, this wasn't just about Diddy. It wasn't even just about Suge. It was about an ecosystem built on silence. Back inside, R.J. Donovan Suge's calls were being monitored more closely. Rumors swirled that prison authorities were considering cutting his podcast privileges entirely. But Suge, he didn't care. In his next recording leaked not broadcast, he doubled down. "They mad 'cause I said the truth, but I ain't the one who built this system. I just survived it. And don't get it twisted. Cassie ain't no angel. She ain't a devil either. But she knew what it took to get where she got. Y'all call it victim blaming. I call it reality." This time, even some of Suge's old allies distanced themselves. Dr. Dre's camp issued a short but pointed statement. "The words of Suge Knight reflect no one's experience but his own. We support survivors." But it was Cassie's former manager, Leslie Harper, who delivered the most striking rebuke. In an op-ed for The Atlantic, she wrote, "What Suge Knight revealed wasn't just his mindset. It was the mindset that allowed this industry to protect predators for decades. If speaking the truth requires a woman to sacrifice her career, her safety, or her dignity, then maybe the real question isn't whether she knew the cost. It's why so many men like Suge thought they were the ones who got to set the price." Back in court, the prosecutors prepared to present their final round of evidence. Diddy's lawyers, visibly strained, filed a motion to delay. Denied. The judge was clear: the public interest in a timely trial outweighs the defense's request. Outside, the courthouse was surrounded by protesters. Some held signs reading, "Believe women." Others held ones that read, "Justice for all, even the silent." And then there were the few masked anonymous who held signs with Suge Knight's face crossed out. One read, "Your legacy isn't music, it's rotten." By now it was obvious. Suge had sparked a cultural flashpoint. He had meant to defend Diddy, or at least cast doubt on the chorus rising against him. But what he'd done instead was open a door that couldn't be closed. At that moment, Diddy wasn't just a man on trial. He was the symbol of something far more sinister, and Suge Knight, from behind prison walls, had accidentally helped the world see it more clearly than ever before. Inside the courtroom, Day 22 began without ceremony. No one needed a gavel to understand the gravity. The gallery was packed, federal marshals posted at every door. The judge entered quietly. His face was pale, his voice grave. "We will continue," he said. "The people may call their next witness." The prosecution stood. "We call Special Agent Marianne Lott." Click. Heels on tile. A woman in a charcoal blazer took the stand. Confidence, measured. Agent Lott worked with the Department of Homeland Security's Human Trafficking Task Force. Her task: connect the digital dots behind the scenes, between the money, the victims, the private flights, and the hidden names. She began by confirming what many had only speculated. "Yes, we have verified financial transactions between Mr. Combs' entertainment entities and offshore accounts used to pay for hotels, charter jets, and undisclosed service agreements. Do these correspond with the alleged freak-offs?" They do, consistently, across multiple years, multiple cities, and at least 6 countries. The room didn't gasp anymore. It listened. It was learned. Agent Lott moved to the next bombshell: the Red Book, a digital ledger of attendees, facilitators, victims, and observers. The Red Book, she said, is an encrypted internal log maintained by staff at Mr. Combs' estate. It was mirrored on a drive labeled Work Tapes, which we retrieved during a forensic audit of a seized MacBook. She clicked a remote. The screen behind her lit up with a spreadsheet. Each row was chilling. Alias Black Swan. Status guest. Note brought by R. No Phones. alias Sugar Bee. Status performer, note dressed plus injected, alias Scribe. Status legal observer, note signed, logged. Cassie's name was never mentioned, but the roles were clear. Victims didn't need to be named to be recognized. The cross-examination by Diddy's defense was weak, almost symbolic. No proof the defendant personally logged these entries, correct, Agent Lott said. But he paid the salaries of every person who did. Meanwhile, Suge Knight's name continued to hover like a toxic cloud over the proceedings. Though not a defendant, his interview had inadvertently confirmed elements prosecutors now used in court culture context complicity. And the backlash hadn't stopped. A Change.org petition to revoke his podcast privileges had crossed 250,000 signatures. Survivor advocacy groups held press conferences outside the prison urging California's Department of Corrections to reclassify Suge's public platform as harmful and dangerous. Yet Knight remained defiant. In another call this time, leaked to a gossip blog, he quipped, "They're mad because I told the ugly truth. But the truth doesn't matter how it sounds." Back in court, the prosecution wasn't slowing. Their next witness, a whistleblower from within Interscope Records. He walked in wearing dark sunglasses, former head of artist development, name sealed. But his voice shook the room. "I was told to coordinate artists' appearances at private parties. These were not gigs. These were grooming operations." "How were they incentivized?" the prosecutor asked. "Exposure, studio time, or sometimes silence payments. Depends on how loud they were getting." He continued, there were codes, not just for status but for risk. Red meant watch for talkback. Blue means move to the next location quietly. There was even a purple tag, compliant, keep close. The judge pressed a hand to his temple, and then came a chilling moment. We discovered that one staffer used code A12 for minors, who accidentally ended up in the guest list via talent scouting apps. Did Diddy know? Yes. Emails confirm he replied to one case, "Never again, scrub and rebrand." The term scrub was explained as deleting digital footprints. Photos mentions even DMV records for staff names used as aliases. Outside the courthouse, protesters grew louder. They no longer shouted about Diddy, they shouted about everyone. End industry trafficking, no more NDAs for abuse. We see you, Suge. Inside, the witness continued. There were rehearsals, he said, for silence. Legal teams would brief talent before parties. They were told what to say if questioned, what tone to use, what a smile. Did anyone object? Yes. One girl refused. She disappeared from the agency and was never signed again. Name redacted. But I remember her alias, Citrine. Was this system unique to Mr. Combs? No. He perfected it, but others watched, learned. He looked at the judge. Your Honor, this wasn't one man's mistake. This was infrastructure. By now the jury was visibly shaken. One woman blinked, hard lips pressed together. Another juror crossed himself quietly. Then came the final piece of evidence that day. A video. The prosecution played it on screen. It was silent at first. A velvet-walled room, dozens seated. Diddy laughed, holding court. The room's atmosphere cult-like, euphoric, but manufactured. Then a woman enters, hesitant. Her eyes darted. A staffer hands her a form. She signs. It led to a chair. Her hands tremble. And behind her a camera. Always a camera. The video ends. No one breathes. The judge stands. We will recess until tomorrow. As the courtroom cleared, Diddy didn't look up. His hand covered his mouth. A man once loud, now silenced by his own legacy. And still Suge Knight's voice echoed. He had meant to defend his own code, but in doing so, he had shattered its illusion. Day 23 began with barricades along the courthouse steps and helicopters circling overhead. The world was watching now, not just the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, but the unraveling of an entire era. And inside the R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility, Suge Knight was still talking. His voice, recorded over a prison line, leaked once more. "Don't act like she didn't want it," Suge said, referring to Cassie Ventura. "The game doesn't owe you sympathy if you know the rules. You get in the limo, you pay the price." The backlash was instant. Activists called for his immediate transfer to isolation. Feminist coalitions filed petitions. A senator from California called Suge's words the vilest defense of systemic abuse I've ever heard, but Suge didn't flinch. In his next podcast episode, recorded less than 24 hours after the leak, he doubled down. Cassie ain't the only one who got famous off the freak shows, and she damn sure ain't the only one took the perks. What she thought that the world came for free. He leaned closer to the prison phone. "Let Puffy speak. Let him tell you who built this. He wasn't the architect, he was the apprentice." Back in court, Suge's words hung in the air like poison. No one quoted them aloud, but everyone felt their weight. The prosecution continued with a new witness, an anonymous former nurse contracted through a concierge medical service. She wore a hat and oversized sunglasses, voice disguised. "Between 2015 and 2019, I was called to 4 different residences, including one in Aspen and one in the Bahamas. What services did you provide? IV hydration, wound care, sedative monitoring?" She paused. "I thought I was working post-concert recovery, but eventually I realized it wasn't exhaustion, it was traumatic." These women weren't tired, they were broken. The courtroom fell still. Once a girl told me, "He said if I told anyone he'd post the videos. He said my parents would disown me." Did she name him? She didn't need to. He walked in 10 minutes later. Diddy sat stone-faced. The nurse continued. One woman had scratches on her back so deep she bled through the gauze. Another asked if she was pregnant. I wasn't allowed to follow up. "And you never reported this?" "No, I was paid to keep silent. I'm breaking that silence now." The judge admitted her signed affidavit and copies of payment receipts under seal. The silence in the courtroom was now ritual, but outside noise grew. CNN ran with the headline "Sex Power and the Machine Inside Diddy's Empire of Silence." Reddit threads exploded. TikTokers stitched clips with commentary. Hashtags like Burriot's Freak of Files and Suge Knew trended globally. Then came the curveball. The defense called a single witness. Not a victim, not a denial, a cultural historian. He took the stand with a stack of books and a calm demeanor. "Mr. Combs," he began, "didn't create this culture, he inherited it." The courtroom shifted. The strategy was clear: deflect, historicize, dilute. This trial is not about one man, it's about an industry. For decades, the entertainment world has thrived on secrecy and coercion. From Sinatra's Vegas to Studio 54, this is not new. The prosecution objected. Irrelevant. The defendant's choices are not excused by cultural legacy. Sustained, the judge ruled. But the message had landed. And back in R.J. Donovan, Suge Knight's podcast dropped another bomb. They were mad at Puff for playing a dirty game, but nobody was mad at the ones who wrote the rulebook. Russell, Clive, Andre, you know the names. Then came the most disturbing part. Suge said, "They used to test new talent with the egg game. If you know, you know. Crack one on the floor, crack one on the soul." Listeners were horrified. Critics called it ritualistic abuse, framed as hazing. Former insiders confirmed some version of it existed, though no one dared go on record. Meanwhile, the courtroom stormed ahead. The prosecution presented evidence of offshore wire transfers, masked as consulting fees, to shell companies, linked to adult entertainment operations, and overseas escort agencies. What were these funds used for? The prosecutor asked the forensic accountant. Room rentals, flights, escorts, event security, but under names like Urban Wellness and Artist Retreat Services. The judge raised an eyebrow. Artist retreats, yes, Your Honor, except these locations had mirrored glass and biometric locks. Diddy never turned to his lawyers. He just stared at the screen as if willing the numbers to vanish. Then came the tapes, recovered from a now-defunct server belonging to a production house Diddy had once invested in. One clip showed a party. Guests wore masks. A woman signed a form. A man whispered in her ear. She nodded, trembling. The camera panned out. Music played an unreleased track by Diddy himself. A staffer on the recording said she passed the test. She'll go far. The court did not react with shock anymore. It reacted with fatigue. This wasn't a revelation. This was rotten. And for the first time, Diddy leaned forward and rubbed his temples. He was no longer the center of the storm. He was its residue. The final witness that day came with protection, face blurred, voice modulated. She had worked for a private jet charter service. I arranged flights for Mr. Combs, routinely, often last minute. Did you notice any patterns? Yes. Female passengers were always listed as assistants, but the same ones never flew twice. Did anyone complain? Yes. One woman tried to change her flight. My boss told me, if she talks, they'll make her disappear like the last one. Did you record that call I did? She played it. A voice. We don't need dead weight. Send her through the other list. Other list, the prosecutor asked. The woman nodded. It was labeled exits. The courtroom went still. Were there any names on it? Yes, mine. With that, the court adjourned. Reporters filed out slowly. Protesters burned mock NDAs outside. Social media lit up again, but not just with anger. Now there was grief. The world wasn't watching a trial anymore. It was witnessing the collapse of a dynasty. And from his cell in San Diego, Suge Knight had one last word that night. You can kill the king, but the castle's still standing. He laughed. But this time no one joined him. Day 24. The courtroom echoed with a silence louder than outrage. The final verdict was near. Suge Knight's latest prison podcast was banned across multiple platforms after public uproar. His last defense of Diddy. He just played the game we were all taught, triggered bipartisan condemnation. Cassie entered silently. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The jury returned, guilty on all counts. Trafficking, conspiracy, coercion. Diddy stared ahead, no tears, no appeal, just stillness. Federal agents moved swiftly, arrests, subpoenas. Music moguls, executives, even politicians faced investigation. The tower had cracked. Back at R.J. Donovan, Suge Knight was moved to solitary. No phone, no podcast. Outside, survivors marched. Inside, justice stood, no more silence.